What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we have a friend of mine, James Clingerman. He's going to be on the podcast with us. James is he's an old school black belt, right? He'll talk about when he started training. He started training back in the day, and when I was a white belt who just got started, I met him for the first time in 2004 at my last white belt tournament. I met him, and then he and my coach at the time, Mike, were friends. And then afterwards, we all went out to get Mexican food together after the tournament was over. And I remember he was super cool, and I liked him a lot. And he's been a friend pretty much ever since. And as I've come along the way, like I've competed at his competitions and stuff like that. So we're excited to have him on. And also for you guys that are listening, the dude's been through some stuff. So he'll talk about it on the podcast, but some stuff that probably would have, gotten most people out of it. He basically just kept going. I mean, it's a substantial injury that did not come from jiu-jitsu. He did not have any control over it. And, the crazy bastard kept going.
And he's super lighthearted about it. He's kind of very much like, it's part of the thing. And he hasn't, like you said, and it hasn't let it stop him one bit. My favorite part of the podcast, I would say, or one of my favorites, is when we ask some of these guys that are these OGs, old grapplers or older grapplers, and we ask them where they started training, where their actual training facility was, because it's usually not a standalone gym. It's somewhere weird, and so he's got a really cool place where they started training. Yeah,
so I hope you guys enjoy this one. This one will be a mixture of both useful jiu-jitsu information, but a lot of old school stories about just talking about what things used to be like, which I know a lot of you guys who are newer to jiu-jitsu, you kind of enjoy that.
It's fun.
So with that said, guys, we'll jump into the podcast. As always, big thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web. Again, you guys, if you're a longtime listener, I harp on this stuff all the time. I'm a big fan of their CBD products, primarily because of the fact that I know what I'm going to get inside of the bottle or the gummy or the whatever it is. And one of the things, I recently put up a video of me with a bag of my gear, what I put in my jiu-jitsu bag, and my traveling bag, one of the things I always take with me. So I just got back from Florida, and when I was traveling down there, I was training, I always they have that CBD Medic balm. Stuff's good. Because it just happens sometimes I'll get, a little tweak or something, or my knee or something gets stiff, and I can rub a little bit of that on it, and it definitely seems to help. And I know that, they got their stuff actually FDA approved to say that it helps with pain and stuff like that. So it's good stuff. So again, if you guys are interested in any of their products, like the CBD Medic balms, or any of their tinctures or gummies or any of that stuff, check them out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on the order. And again, if you have not tried a CBD product and you're curious about it, you're like, man, I kind of want to try some, just try something out. Try it out for a month. See what it does for you. It may do nothing at all. And if it does nothing at all, that's okay. It's no harm, no foul, right? But if you're someone like me, it's something that sort of, it helps in multiple different ways in my life, and especially with training and with inflammation related to sports and stuff like that we do, and it definitely helps with being more well rested and more what's the word? Just overall sense of well-being, I guess you'd say. So check it out, and just try one of the tinctures out, try one of the sets of gummies out, just try it for a month and see what you feel, and then kind of make your own judgment beyond that. Also, big thanks to Matt at Epic Roll. Matt sent me a big bunch of stuff. So I'm actually trying. I'm going to make some videos on it too, because I'm going through all this stuff and trying it out. He finally gave me a fanny pack. It's I want his fanny packs. But he gave me some of the new shorts. So the shorts do not have the Velcro, which is kind of nice, because typically speaking, on almost all of my shorts, the thing that gives out first is the Velcro. It's like gi pants. The first thing to give out is your knees. Almost always is the knees, right? But I've been wearing the shorts this week during my no-gi training sessions, and they're good. I like them. I like them primarily because you almost forget they're there. It's kind of like when a good set of clothing fits, you don't even recognize that it's on anymore, right? The only time you recognize when clothes are fitting is when they're when they don't fit well. It's like when things are tight, you're kind of moving around. That's when you know it's not good. And they're super, super loose and mobile. It's almost like a mixture of tie shorts with just athletic shorts from back in the day, and there's no pockets or anything like that, with something that's designed for grapplers. they hit slightly a little bit above the knee. I would have liked them to be a little shorter. Just because I'm one of those crazy people for any of you military guys, like I'm one of those guys that like works out in like Ranger panties, like the softy shorts. I love those shorts.
I've got a pair.
They're so comfy. I've got like 10 pairs. So like I'll wear those and I'll go out in my backyard and meditate and do my like Tai Chi stuff with my softy shorts on, which I'm sure makes my neighbors like look at me like, what
is there any footage of that? On the back end,
Jess has some.
Jess right, we'll talk to her.
Jess has recorded me before doing crazy stuff. So, but again, going back to it, if you want to check out those shorts, again, if you're in the market for a set of MMA shorts or a set of no-gi shorts, check them out. I think they're super comfortable. I'll also be doing a video review on the gear coming up soon on the YouTube channel, but you can go to epicrollbjj.com, promo code is Jiu-Jitsu, and save 15% on the order. And also he's got some new t-shirts out, like the Kimura t-shirt.
Have you took that for a test drive yet?
No, I washed it to shrink it just a little bit, and then he didn't shrink much, but just a little bit, because he sent me an XL. I'm more of a schmedium guy that wears larges, but it fits all right. I'm just I like I like to show the guns off a little bit more.
We'll get bigger guns then.
I'm trying, bro.
Quit trying to shrink your shirts. Why don't you get to the gym?
I'm trying, man. I'm almost up to like 17s.
I could just see you just like pumping iron and you're just pumping and just measuring. Jess, come over here and measure my arm.
Well, every now and then you got to just check on them to see where they're at, So like,
I don't know the last time I measured my arms.
Well, of course, because you're not a meathead. Like I'm in there like consciously trying to get bigger, so I want to see if they're getting any bigger.
Yeah.
But
no, it's fun. That is fun. Just kind of sculpting yourself.
I guess, man. It's just like it's a stupid thing. Like in the podcast, James talks about like tapping and he like how you'd hang out like grit out of submissions.
Yeah.
I never did, because I was like, man, I want to go lift weights. I was like, I can't lift weights, my arm's all jacked up. So I was like, I'll tap out,
Oh, man.
I'm always torn between lifting and jiu-jitsu, but I love them both. And guys, if you want to check out some extra content that we've made, from the podcast, I've been uploading a lot of stuff, little bits and pieces of other video products and stuff like that I do. I've been putting it into the Patreon for you guys. So if you want to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, and you can check that out. And again, there's a couple tiers there. Pick which one you'd like to try out. And again, we appreciate the contribution that you give to us. And again, hopefully you can get some entertainment and some information out of it. There's, again, video content. There's podcast extras with the guests that we have on. There's also things like, a basic weightlifting template for training, along with warm-up videos and stretching videos, all this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, you can check it out. And obviously, you can unsubscribe and turn it off at any time if you want to. And if you would like to be on the actually, I was going to talk about my email list today with you guys, my Chew Crew list. But you know what? Actually, if you guys are someone that struggles with side control submissions, I'll say it like this: if you struggle with side control submissions, I'm doing a soft, quiet launch of my arms race series. So it's the arms race. Clever use of words, of course. But I call it that also because when I'm trying to when I'm really going to win, when I'm rolling, I basically race to this particular position to try to get my arm scoop, that little arm scoop that I do from side control. That's my position. I try to get to it. And so I put together a series of side control submissions to where you can attack, if you're in side control, the far arm, the near arm, and the neck. That all work synergistically together. And put it together in a series. So again, there's everything from narrated match breakdowns. There's some the technical instruction, and also some sort of rambly style videos that you may be used to if you're watching YouTube. Just talk about the ideas a little bit more that are going on during the techniques. But if you want to check that out right now, what I'm doing is it will be, at the time of filming this, you guys will have a week. So basically, I am going to close down the soft launch on April 8th or 18th. Excuse me, April 18th. I'm going to close it down, and during the soft launch period, from today we're launching, it's the 12th till the 18th. If you get it now, you'll have a chance to get a Jiu-Jitsu journal. It's a 186-page journal that I put together. It's nicer than one I had before. You'll be able to work with me on the second batch of content that I make for it, because I put together the stuff there. And then what I do whenever I release a product is then I take feedback from people that are getting it, what kind of questions that they have. Is there something I didn't explain something better? Cool. Let me make this second batch of content specifically for those early registration people. And then on top of that, I'm also going to be releasing a unreleased set of bits of content, which is basically some jiu-jitsu / philosophical rants that have never made it to YouTube that I'm going to be putting together. It also has some behind-the-scenes footage, and if you'd like to get that, that'll be available as a bonus, along with the journal as a bonus, if you sign up now. Now, if you wait till after the 18th, the bonuses are gone, but I'm putting those bonuses together just to sort of as a thank you for the people that jump on board earlier. And so with that, check it out at jujitsutraining.com/arms race. And if you cannot remember that, jujitsutraining.com/arms race, ARMS, or RACE. If you can't remember that for some reason, just go to my Instagram, go to my YouTube, go to like my email list, any of that stuff, and I'm sure I'm going to be plugging it away somewhere for the next week. So check that out. But with that said, guys, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the podcast with James and talk about some jiu-jitsu. But like Jess and I, like, you know, when we do seminars and stuff, there's like a whole process that we go through of contacting the people, and they get the recording sent back to them and all this stuff, and in coordinating with the people that we're going to. And it was so funny, like we've gotten, like every time we do one of these, the people are like, God, you guys are so organized and great and whatever else. And it's because the bar in jiu-jitsu is so low, right? Like, because what happens in jiu-jitsu is like, you know, it's like you get, like, for instance, a seminar is like, I'm really good at what I do in jiu-jitsu, so therefore I'm not going to learn anything else about, like, you know, anything else. And I'm just going to go, hey, like, and you show up, and I mean, you remember this probably back in the day, you know, someone would show up to do a seminar, and like, I mean, they don't know what they're going to teach until like the last 5 minutes before it starts. Like, hey guys, I think I'm going to show this to you real quick. You know, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm paying for it'd be like going to like a paying to be at like a comedy show, and the guy doesn't even know what jokes he's going to tell you. He just starts like,
he's doing improv the whole time.
Yeah, right.
That was the norm back in the day.
It's not always. It wasn't always, but you would see there would be times where guys would do that. I mean, I remember, you probably have maybe some good stories from this because you're earlier than me, but I remember hearing about like one where they went to a seminar with a guy who was eating like an ice cream cone, like while he's like walking around the mats, like giving instructions.
Oh shit!
It was hot, man. He needed to cool down.
James, when did you get started? When did you start training? Your first time walking into a gym?
Yeah, man. So I started in judo and some, we'll call it Japanese jiu-jitsu, back in like 95. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 97, so like June of 97.
And
right before I turned 18.
How old were you? Oh, right before 18. Wow.
Yeah.
What was so how did you discover it? I mean, when you were, so how old are you now?
I'll be 42 this year.
42.
Yeah, so I'm right at 24 years doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, yeah.
That's crazy at that time. And you've always been in like the Indianapolis or Indiana area, kind of where you live now?
Yeah. Yep.
So it wasn't very prominent, obviously.
No, not at all.
What was your whole, like, what was this discovery process? What kind of, I always love to ask the question, what kind of drew you to walk in for the first time?
Yeah, man. So like I was always really interested in martial arts and stuff, and but didn't want to train. So actually my dad like forced me to do some karate when I was 13, and it was terrible. But yeah, I saw Hoist Gracie on Dan Cortez's, what was that old show? It was an MTV Sports with Dan Cortez. I don't know if you guys even remember that.
I remember.
But they did a highlight of Hoist winning the first UFC. And I was like, what is this noise? And, they're like, this guy beat up karate guys and boxers and all this stuff. And so I was like, I should learn some jiu-jitsu. That'd be neat. And then there just was no jiu-jitsu anywhere. So I went to this, it was actually a karate judo school, and it had a big jiu-jitsu sign on it. But yeah, went in
I
there.
like that
and,
you use the different pronunciation of it.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, little subtle there. If you
Jiu-Jitsu?
Jiu-Jitsu, yeah, because
It's Jujutsu.
yeah.
So what's the difference? Like Japanese jujutsu or jujitsu, whatever you want to say. Like what were you learning initially? I mean, obviously judo is probably still in some way similar, but like what was
so
that like?
basically what it was, this style, the instructor had black belts in taekwondo and judo, and then he at some point decided he was also a jiu-jitsu master. The level of his actual training, if any, in jiu-jitsu is a little bit debatable. But like day one, I walked in with a buddy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I trained with the Gracies. I know those guys." Like,
Oh yeah.
it told me, it was all same. It's always the same stuff. I teach the same stuff. And man, there was a lot of like, a lot of kiyas, and like the higher rank guys wore the hakama, the skirts, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of like standing across from each other, like sweep, aye, and then the other guy, aye, and then he punches, and then you do, and I was like, this is not the same at all. This is like the karate stuff that I didn't like, and I'd read enough Bruce Lee books to just be like, man, this is not how, and I've been in a couple fights, like this is not how this stuff goes. So in '97, one of the guys that was training there, and I had the Hoist and Horion instructional VHS tapes. So I'd gone all through those and knew all that stuff. But a guy named Greg Eldred, he was a blue belt under the Gracie Academy, and he had opened like an affiliation up in Westfield, Indiana, which is about an hour north of Indy. So we started going up there a couple times a week, training with him.
What was that like when they were training early? Like, did you guys with Greg? Did you guys actually have a gym, or were you guys training out of like another space somewhere?
So it wasn't the typical you get a little room in the back of a karate school. He had a basement of it was like an insurance firm. So it was like his little house, and you'd walk in the door and you walk directly down the stairs, and he just had mats down there. So it was a really tiny room. Like it literally wasn't the size of my basement that I'm sitting in now. Little tiny room, matted with a pole right in the middle and concrete walls. And it was actually really cool.
All the best stuff for takedowns.
Yeah, exactly. It only took him about a year before he decided to pad the walls, but it was neat. I remember my first class went in and he was teaching straight ankle locks, and I was like, cool. Because those basically didn't exist in the style I was taking at the time. So,
yeah, it's always interesting. I always like hearing about people's first experience, because obviously you have a gym now, and it's a nice gym. You come in and it's dedicated for that purpose, and but a lot of the people that weren't around in the late '90s, early 2000s, they don't realize when they walk into a gym and what went into making that gym actually happen, because everybody else started off in these very weird places, like you were saying, like a insurance building in the basement. It's not like, if you had to put directions on how to get there, it'd be kind of like a little bit more confusing, right? So how long did you train until you became kind of, I guess, serious, or where jiu-jitsu maybe started to take a turn? Because obviously, it starts off as just a couple guys down in the basement going or whatever, but when did it become something where you were really into it?
Man, honestly, it was probably before I even walked in the door the first time. Oddly enough, I never competed in karate. I never competed in judo. I never I just didn't compete. And once I started watching the VHS tapes, the instructional tapes, I kind of fell in love with actual jiu-jitsu, right? And so I don't even think I trained for a month or two before I was starting to compete. Within 3 or 4 months in, I flew to California. I did the first Gracie Nationals, and so as soon as I walked in the door, man, I was completely immersed. At that time, I was training 6-7 days a week, sometimes 2 times a day if I could. It was just right off the bat. It was just something I was like, this is what I do. And haven't looked back, no breaks.
And what was the training like back then? In comparison, when you think of it compared to maybe how you would run your training now, What was the training like back then? Like if someone was to, if you were to like take someone and drop them off into that mat room in the bottom of the insurance building, what is that like?
Oh man, it wasn't super different. I think the biggest difference was, Greg at the time was a blue belt. He was a 2-stripe blue belt, and he was probably the highest ranked guy definitely in the Indianapolis area in central Indiana, but like one of the higher ranking guys in the state, just with those couple stripes on his belt. There were like no purple belts, definitely no brown or blacks anywhere nearby. So a lot of the training was still like, if somebody, now like BJJ Fanatics and all these other sites, and they're releasing new content like almost daily. We've got YouTube and all this stuff, and so you could always find new sources of material. And back then it was like there was like a couple VHS instructionals, and you and your buddies would all chip in on them and copy them and trade them, and theoretically
they were expensive too.
Man, they were so expensive.
Because I remember like I was actually doing some stuff for a series that I actually have coming out, and I was talking about how it started with an instructional series that I bought way back in the day and used in my basement when I couldn't train for a little bit because I didn't have a car. And I remember paying, the series was okay, and I remember paying like well over $100 for the thing. And it's just crazy how, like, again, back then the resources just weren't there. You had instructionals, you had some books, but good luck trying to learn from a book if you don't know what the hell you're looking at. I remember it was like one of Jean-Jacques' books, and he has a couple good ones, but they make sense to me when I look at them now because I have them. But when I was like a white belt, I bought one. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna learn this book, and I open it up, and it's like, the picture one, it's like, okay, my friend, like grab here, and then picture two is like somehow they ended up on the ground in an arm bar. They're like, wait a second, where was all the other stuff there? And it just was so hard to follow. Where video is so much easier, it just wasn't possible back then to have it streaming on the internet. Maybe a question to ask you about instructionals, because I've used them a bunch over the years, from white belt to black belt. Do you think that they work well? Do you think they work?
Absolutely. So I've got a lot of guys that are like, man, I can't watch instructionals. I don't learn that way. But I feel like I can watch instructional, not even ever drill it, walk into class, grab somebody and do the move. Right. And I've always kind of been that way, but I don't think there's a huge difference if I have a partner and I have an instructional to sit down and drill it. The difference comes when you try to do it and it falls apart and you're not getting it right. There's nobody there to kind of troubleshoot for you and help you through the parts you're having issues with. Okay. But yeah, overall, man, like if it's a quality instructional, I've seen some where you're like, dude, you've been talking for an hour and a half and you haven't even shown a move yet. And I thought we were doing a leg lock and we're talking about some river in Brazil. Or what is, that's not a real example, but you know what I mean?
No, I know what you're saying. I've seen some of them, like, hell, I've been to classes before, bro, where I walked in, and I'm ready to get down and let's do some training. And then, the black belt begins class or ends class with like a 40-minute monologue. I'm like, and I'm a talker. I talk a lot, but like but I try to be mindful of that. Like, I'm not gonna like drone on about stuff forever. Like, we want to train, so I totally understand what you're saying. Taking that and putting it into an instructional standpoint,
right? Yeah, especially like if I'm buying your instructional and it's the thing I've paid for. I don't know you. I don't know your personality. Like, I'm buying your techniques, right? I'm not buying to hang out with you and hear your fun stories. Like, that's what podcasts are for. That's what your personal YouTube page or whatever's for. Or if I come to your school and train with you, like, that's a better time to get to know your personality. Now, I'm not saying you can't have personality in instructional videos, but to ramble on and just not just provide the content, right? Like, I hate spending $300 on a 6-disc instructional series and you get 6 moves. It's like 6 hours long, 6 moves, and a lot of talking. This way, if you ever bought one of my instructional videos, it's like 30, 40 moves per, and you get a little talking. Like, if I'm talking, I'm explaining jiu-jitsu, right? But yeah, I don't see why there's not why you can't learn from instructionals. I know you've got a ton out. I've got a couple out. I do them with you know, and make instructionals for other people. I learn from them. So
Yeah, I just asked that because I know sometimes, there's sometimes this resistance, and it's rightfully so because there is some crap out there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of resistance from people sometimes where they're like, I don't know, like, is it, like, because just with anything, I've seen people whether it's an instructional course about jiu-jitsu or even like related to business or something, like, I don't know, like, could this really work, like, whatever. But one of the reasons why I make them is because, like, I remember being a white belt and using them, and then like being able to use those techniques, and like even like one of the ones that I used when I was a white belt, I took like 5 techniques out of that damn disc, and I've been using them ever since, and I've gotten better with the moves over the time, and I've gotten better with them. But I remember it started with actually using the 5. It was actually funny. I remember there was a period from like 6 months where I couldn't train because I didn't have a car. And I remember I came back to training, and me and my buddy had been practicing the moves in the basement. And I came back, and I was, my coach hadn't seen me for 6 months, and I was hitting moves he hadn't shown me. And I remember he looked at me, he goes, "Man, you've been watching those DVDs, haven't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So,
James, what about, you talked about like competing when you were younger, or when you first started training. And it's interesting, they're gonna have an IBJJF coming up in Indianapolis area. So that's crazy how far that's come, because those were so few and far between. Like, can you explain, being a young guy and like chomping at the bit, what the competition scene was like, and maybe compare it to what it is now?
There wasn't one. There wasn't. Like I said, I competed twice within my first like 4 months, and one time I drove like 6 hours. It was mostly 6 hours because I didn't know how to drive at the time. I was so young that I, just got lost. But it was, way up in northern Indiana.
And since I feel like we're going back in time. And remember,
where's
folks,
your map?
There was no, we had to have maps and MapQuest directions. There was no like just put the GPS on your phone or anything.
You actually get lost going places, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't even have like, I may have had a computer at my house, but we never had, like, I never had internet. You know what I mean? I didn't have internet until I was like an adult, moved out, had my own place. So yeah, I literally, like, it was me and 2 buddies, and we had like a physical giant map you fold out. And, yeah, so we show up to this tournament. It was at a guy named Chet Shemahorn. He's a Horion Gracie black belt now. But it was his school, and it was like this little bitty tiny room in the middle of a shooting range. And
what?
So, yeah,
a shooting, like a gun range.
You can dodge a bullet. You can dodge.
Right. So now I don't know. I don't know if the range was active. I want to say it wasn't, but I'm not 100% sure. But I remember they were like, I was like, "Hey, like, where's your changing room, your restroom, whatever?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, go out this door and walk around." So I didn't realize it was a gun range at the time. And so I walk around what they have built as their training room, and like I'm walking down range to go to this bathroom. I'm like, all right, nobody's shooting anything. But yeah, so here's how big the tournament was. So this is a tournament, like an advertised, like, as much advertising as you could do back then. It was me, my 2 friends that drove with me, and 9 guys from their school.
Nice.
That was it.
Yeah.
There's like 12 of us. So I think my house is falling down. So yeah, it ended up being like one division. It was an open weight, open rank. So Chet and his cousin were blue belts at the time, and all the other 10 people were white belts.
Nice.
So we did that, and then I flew to California for like I said, the first Gracie Nationals that Horion Gracie put on. And then other than that, man, like there was a couple tournaments here and there. Like I know Alan Manganello ran one down in Louisville every great once in a while. Greg Lucas ran one in Indiana every great once in a while. And then mostly I was competing in judo tournaments just because it was something to do. I could grapple, I could do a little bit of jiu-jitsu, I could choke and arm lock guys, and it was about as close as we could get back then until about like 2004. And then, we started Ego, and Greg Eldred started the Hoosier Open. It's 2004, started opening up a little bit more. But, yeah, those first, like, early years, man, it was a couple tournaments here and there and a lot of judo.
Yeah, when you're talking about the map, I remember when I first started in 2003, there were competitions around. There were there was one from Louisville, there was one within like, 5 to 6 hours driving, like every other month or so. But I remember in 2004, we just wanted to do a competition. So we found the closest one, which was in North Carolina. And so we drove, and it was in the middle of snow. We drove like 9 hours. We finally got there. We competed and did everything else. Me and my buddy, we were flat broke, so we paid for our dinners with like Coinstar money that we cashed in. Like we, had all the coins and stuff, and actually paid for part of the competition fees and coins, which they really enjoyed. But I remember when we came back, there was like a road closure, and we had to pull off to the side, and we had to pull out a map. And we're like, all right, so we're going up this one, and we're trying to figure it out. And it's so weird. You just forget about doing all that stuff now, where you can just like punch it in, like, hey Siri, I need to get home. Give me directions. Boom, there we go.
Yeah. Everything's so easy now.
It is.
It is.
As far as like learning from a blue belt, was there any pushback at all? I mean, I doubt it because it's so spread out. Was there any pushback about a blue belt teaching jiu-jitsu? Was there any? Because now if you got like purple belts teaching, you're like, all right, you probably shouldn't be teaching. You should be more brown, black. I mean, there's enough black belts around that those guys should be kind of instructing. The head instructors at a school. So what was that was that weird for you guys to be learning from a blue belt?
So not for me. Like at the time there was no purple, brown, or black belts anywhere. So like a blue belt was rare. And we always kind of looked at it like a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was basically the equivalent of a black belt in a lot of the traditional martial arts, right? Like it takes you about 2 years to get a blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu. It takes you about 2 years to get a black belt and other stuff. So when you kind of look at it that way, it was like, oh, it was fine. And Greg was always a very good teacher. He had ties directly to the Gracie Academy, and he was very open about showing new things and, kind of going off curriculum of what they wanted. He even had like old videos of like he would videotape himself doing moves. Like he would take private lessons. And so we'd even break out like his old videos and, go down to his basement because it was a little closer, I guess, and just work through stuff on the weekends. But back then there wasn't. I think like, when I opened my academy and I was teaching as a blue belt and as a purple and even as a brown, people would come in and they would be a little turned off by it. So I'm sure, to some there was a little kickback because I experienced it personally. People would be like, oh, well, when are you going to get your black belt? I'm like, I don't know. How would I know? And they're like, well, I know when my niece did karate, they knew all the dates. And like, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. Like, so yeah, like I know I personally running an academy, not being a black belt, experienced some pushback. But not much, man. Like I always tried to educate people and just let them know like, hey, this is kind of how this goes. Like karate black belt's about 2 years of training, a jiu-jitsu purple belt's like 7 to 8 years, 9 years, whatever. And I just throw them down, beat them up right there in the lobby. That worked great every time.
Yeah. So let them know what's up.
Yeah. You just show them.
So you started jiu-jitsu in 97. When did you because I know that you, like most of us that got into it in the early 90s or the late 90s and early 2000s, kind of had the desire to want to fight mixed martial arts. When did you have your first fight?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. Is like when I started jiu-jitsu, a lot of guys were like doing it to fight, right? Back then, if you weren't at least competing, you were kind of weird. And now like 80% of my people don't compete at all.
Well, the idea of even being like a competitor in jiu-jitsu was not really a thing. It's like you would do competitions because it was something to do, but like the idea of being like, I'm just going to be a jiu-jitsu competitor, for most of us in the U.S. and the Midwest and stuff, that wasn't a thing because, I mean, like who was doing it? Like, I mean, there was no, especially Americans, there was no Americans like that were just professionally competing in jiu-jitsu at the time. I think probably some of the first you had were guys like maybe, Lister and maybe Munson or something like that, but it just wasn't a thing. So,
yeah. And even then, man, like, it was MMA, right? So my first fight was, 1998. It was March 6th, 98. I did a little show called Indiana Martial Arts Challenge. That was so. I was trying to think. There was it was weird rules. So it was a 12-minute round and a 3-minute overtime if need be. And it was 12 minutes. So it was 12 minutes. And then 3 minutes. So it was 12 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 minutes. So it And so the 3-minute overtime was just if you went the 12 minutes, it wasn't like if it was a close match, you know. And then so yeah, I fought this guy Carlos Avalar. He was a Hapkido guy with some jiu-jitsu experience, and I tapped him armbar like exactly at a minute. Was like, cool, you know. I wish I would have had a little more ring time, but you know, I won. It was nice. And I was back in the back, and I'm getting dressed, and they come back, and they're like, hey, we want you to fight again. And I was like, okay. So what they had done a 4-man tournament also that night in my weight class, which was like 165 pounds. And the guy that was supposed to go to the final, one of the guys, excuse me, guy named Shad Williams. Actually, he is Sean Williams' brother. So Sean Williams, as in like Henzo Gracie, Sean Williams. So Sean's brother actually lives in Greenwood by my Jiu-Jitsu Academy and doesn't train. So if you ever hear this, Shad, get in and train with me. Yeah, so he fought and he broke his thumb, and then so he couldn't continue. So I was like, yeah, I'll fight again. You know, why not? I might get a belt. And so the guy they had me in there was Shoney Carter.
Oh, no kidding! Wow.
Yeah, and so Shoney Shoney was already a professional fighter at the time. He had the Extreme Challenge title, and I think he had just lost it to Laverne Clark, like a couple months earlier. But so Shoney, you know, much older than me, boxed in the military, had a kickboxing record. He was I think an AAU Greco-Roman national wrestling champion. Was training with Bob Shermer at Combat Dough. So he was a very, very experienced fighter, even, you know, back in 98. And went in and he just tossed me all over the mat. I mean, he lateral dropped me, he hip tossed me, he suplexed me, like just, it was ridiculous. But yeah, we went the full 12, and then we went the full 3-minute overtime. He won a decision, rightfully so. And then I actually fought 3 months later in July. I fought Keith Wisniewski. Wisniewski later went on to fight in the UFC and stuff too. He fought all over. But yeah, so my fight with Keith was actually it was open hand on the ground.
Okay.
So like no close fist. But it was a weird scenario. I'd actually hurt my foot right off the bat. I kicked him in the knee, and like 15 seconds in, I was like, I want to go home. I'm done. This hurts really bad. And then, yeah, so Keith and we went into overtime, and I actually caught him in a crucifix in overtime. He tapped and tapped and tapped and tapped, and the ref let him tap until the bell rang, because it was probably like he started tapping like the last like 5 or 6 seconds of the round. Referee let him tap through the bell, and because the ref never called it, it was considered a draw. So
that's interesting. So what were those old days like fighting? Like, you know, I remember there was so much, you know, what's the word? There was so much of a variation from event to event in the ones that either I was a part of or watched, where, you know, I went to one once where, I mean, we were at basically like an outdoor bar, and they were just pulling people in from outside the cage, like the ring. They were at a boxing ring. They were like, who wants to get in here and fight? And they were just pulling people in and letting them, you know, like letting them fight these other guys. And then sometimes you'd get into these, you know, these shows and stuff like that, and you would see these people where, like, my first MMA fight was where I remember I'm downstairs in this auditorium. The auditorium's packed with people. It was actually at a big venue here in town, and I remember this dude, he's hitting pads and he looks great. Looks like he's just like gonna just crazy good. And then, you know, he goes up and fights, and I remember I hear like, oh, like all the people screaming and ding, 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 real quick. He comes back down. He goes, man, I was like jabbing the dude, then like doing a cross, and I kneed him in the face, and then dropped whatever. Well, what happened was he basically did this like spasm and just sort of hit him. And then I went back and like watched all the rest of the fights. And I was like, none of these, like half of these guys have probably not actually trained, right? Like there's like a handful of us that have definitely trained, and the rest of these dudes are like, you know, I'm just going to get out there and fight, man. I want to get out there and bang. Let me do something, you know? So what were those old events like for you?
Yeah, man, I think you you described it exactly. So, you know, honestly, I've only had 6 fights, and that's only 3 events. So my first 3 fights were the ones I told you about. They were on the same show.
But you were around a lot back then, though, too.
Yeah, so I was around a ton of them. I used to ref like dang near every weekend, And man, fortunately, I never really experienced the, hey, let's pull a guy out of the audience and let him fight. Kind of. So I saw a guy one time went out and he did a grappling match in blue jeans. So if I remember right, it was Justin Wisniewski. It was Keith's little brother, who's much smaller brother. And I think his opponent no-showed or something along those lines. So they pulled like some big burly looking guy out of the audience and they let him grapple in blue jeans. And I think Justin got like slammed really hard. Like he ended up tapping the guy, but yeah, I've seen a few things like that. And then like one night, one of my guys was on the show. This is actually maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. And his opponent backed out. So the promoter went up to that guy's coach and was like, you have to take his spot. Your guy punked out and left, so you have to fight, and just kind of bullied him into fighting.
No kidding.
And the dude did it. He gloved up and he went out, and my guy was a white belt at the time, and punched him, took him down, mounted him, and punched him a whole bunch more, and the fight was over. But yeah, that was probably the funniest, because like I just remember like the promoter running backstage, like grabbing this dude and like going, "You have to fight! Like there's no choice. Like glove up, get in the ring."
Oh man, that reminds me of one where we had a guy like, we had a guy fighting. It was his very first fight, but the dude was very scary looking, right? His name was Marcus, and he has like tattoos and stuff like that. Nice dude, but just he has that look to him, right? And he was fighting, and we went to this show. It was like the drive was like an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and so we all get down there, and we get there, and the dude who's going to fight is actually there, like he's there, but he says he doesn't have any gloves. So he's like, I can't fight. I don't have any gloves. So it's like he had he was backing out. He was like getting second, he's losing his heart a little bit. And I remember our coach was like, at the time, he like grabbed someone else's gloves and ran up there and was like, no, man, you're going to basically bully him and like, you're going to fight tonight. Here's your gloves. Like you're not getting out of there. And he gets in the fight with Marcus. And I mean, Marcus like clipped his shoulder and he curled over and was like, oh man, like you got me. It was terrible. It was like 2 hours to drive down there. You go through all the training to get ready. And the dude just doesn't have the actual heart to fight for it.
Oh, that's awful.
Man, what you see on a lot of these local shows is like you get these guys that they don't train. They're like, oh man, I can go out there and get hit in the face a couple times, tap out, and I get $200 and maybe get, a little bit of ticket sales. And they get, 20 of their family members like, you're going to get them this time, Jim Bob. And they come out and, a guy walks out with $300-400 and he didn't really get hurt. He probably just got choked out in 30 seconds of work. And,
coming to a ring with a record of 0-20.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's that one guy, had like he was on in Indiana in that casino. He fought, who's the big dude from Louisville?
Are you talking about Ivy?
Ivy. It was his record. Like he had a crazy, he had like 100-something fights.
Oh yeah,
John Ivy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he kind of acted weird during that fight. It was Ron Sparks, I think was his name.
Yeah, Ron.
He
fought Big Ron, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a weird fight.
Well, he was
like run around.
He was doing like cartwheel kicks and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's entertaining. He had that one fight with Ken Shamrock where he did like 2 or 3 rolls and Shamrock's just like, yeah.
It's so interesting though. Like I could never, if I wasn't prepared, I would never step into it. Like I just think there's the risks. I mean, you get seriously hurt. I mean, especially the disparity. Like even from back in the day when you had your second fight against a guy like Shoney Carter, who probably had, who knows, 20, 30 fights. The guy had ended up having I think over at least 100 fights, I think, in his career. So
and those are the ones that are recorded. A lot of fights back then, right? They weren't recorded. They were just kind of you just didn't know about them.
Yeah, I'll never forget the Shoney Carter where he did the refereeing and the 2 guys double knocked each other out.
Yeah, so I was actually supposed to be reffing that night.
Really?
That was supposed to be my match.
in street clothes.
Yeah. So what had happened, I was supposed to be there reffing and I something came up. I couldn't make it. I don't remember what it was. And so one of my purple belts went to ref, basically in my place. And he needed a break. He came down out of the ring between fights or whatever. And Shoney was like, hey man, you want me to just hit this next one for you? And he's like, yeah, dude, get the sandwich real quick. And sure enough, it was that fight. Shoney got in the ring and ref that one fight and double knockout.
God, what a weird ending.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you have a double knockout.
Yeah, he was like looking around. He's like,
yeah,
he
had his hands out. And he was just like, I don't know what to do.
Everybody come in here.
I mean, this is something that happened like in video games, like you know, because you'd have like the double, like you play Street Fighter. If you hit each other at the right time, it'd be like the double win or whatever. But I've never seen it before or since. Have you?
I saw maybe one or two others. There was one that's actually really similar, and then I saw one where almost the same scenario, but one guy landed the punch and the other guy's head hit him. And they both go down. But I don't think to like that severity where both guys are just stiff armed and they're just like there's obviously neither one of them's getting up, you know.
I wonder if we can have like a double submission, double tap out.
You probably could. I mean, like if you each have each other's leg or something.
Maybe if you had like the old Pancreation rules where you'd have the guys where they'd grab the big boots and they'd be like ripping each other with toe holds or something.
It's whoever can eat it. I mean, whoever can eat it the most, I guess, because those toe holds you can kind of. I mean, you can kind of eat it for some people. Some people let their ankles dislocate. So
yeah. Well, what's the old story? Like back in the ancient Olympics, there's a story of the guy that like one guy had a neck crank and the other guy had a heel hook, and the guy's neck broke. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know.
Man, it's like a Greek Olympics legend. I'm assuming it's not true, but look this up. But like, yeah, one guy like. The guy breaks the guy's neck, but he taps from the heel hook. But because he tapped, he lost. So they wheeled the dead body up onto the first place podium.
I've never heard this.
No,
Chewy,
my God.
Where are you at with this history?
No,
Chewy, I can't believe you haven't heard this.
Yeah, I don't know this one.
Yeah, look it up. Talk about it on a future podcast.
I remember I remember reading a book that was talking about the origins of like mixed type of fighting, and they had, you know, old school versions of Pancreation, which was pretty brutal, right? You know, it was like just, you know, boxing and wrestling essentially mixed. But they said that I guess at the end of the duration of those matches, they would have like a flogging where basically we would each get to like strike or do something to the person, and they would just have to take it, and we would just go back and forth until someone gave up. You know, so. But
it kind of reminds me of that new slap thing they're doing across the table.
Oh, dude!
You think the guys are going to arm wrestle and then they just smack each other one at a
Guess where those are? Guess where those are from?
Russia.
Yeah, they do all the weird shit in Russia, like the team MMA
the tag team parkour MMA.
Meanwhile, in Russia.
Have you all seen the video circulating that the guy dressed as Spider-Man fighting Batman and Robin? It's so funny because the guy that's actually Spider-Man's actually looks decently skilled, and there are two guys just running at him like their hands down. And he's just picking them apart. It's just really funny. They're all dressed up like full suits.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
It's probably in Russia somewhere.
Right, in Russia.
It's just wild.
Yeah, because if it was in America, they'd be like arrested.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's funny, like just how some of these and the stories, you know, like we listen to like Pride, how Pride fighting was going on, and like how they would just like have them go like do drug tests in like the back of like some kind of broom closet and all this random stuff. They're almost encouraging like cheating and drug use and stuff. It was just, and now you look at these fights, and they're still coming along. I mean, some of these local shows are still you're getting some of these varied skilled people, but you know, I think it's come such a long way, which is great.
A ton. I mean, like the local shows, even nowadays, they're like a million times better than what they were. Like, you know, you'll still get a couple turd burgers in there that are just like, you know, where are you training? Like, you know, I mean, if they told you honestly, they'd tell you that they're training in their buddy's garage or something. But you know, then most of the people at this point are actually training and trying to do something. James, why did you stop fighting mixed martial arts?
I don't know. It was boring. No. So yeah, like, well, number one, like I was teaching kind of full time. But so in February 2000, actually, I was sitting at a stoplight and I got shot. So a guy shot me in the head, and I actually went out about like 11 months later, and I did another, like my retirement MMA fight. So I did an 8-man tournament. I had 3 fights that night. Right? Yeah. Why not?
Right.
You know,
what a way to go out.
Look, it can't be worse than getting shot, right? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you're all right.
Well, let me
You
ask
made
this
it.
because I know your eyesight was affected by the gunshot.
Yeah.
When you were having your farewell, fight event, was your eyesight still like affected at the time, or was it okay?
No, so I'm probably like 90, 95, 96+% blind in my left eye.
Was it like that like right after getting shot too, though?
Yeah. It
Okay,
never.
so you're
yeah,
gonna go
I was
have an
blinded.
8-man tournament and you can't even see out of one of your eyes.
Yeah. So, everybody was just like, hey, maybe let's not do much kickboxing because they're like, just take him down, just tap him out, because it's always that easy.
Yeah.
And so I focus mostly on just a little bit more on my wrestling, a lot more on my jiu-jitsu, my positioning. I was okay at striking, but when you're blind in one eye, it really jacks up your depth perception. So I noticed, like, even in a little bit of sparring I would do, I was getting hit a lot more, like way more, and I was missing a lot of my punches, like just matter of an inch, and you're missing your punches, and you're getting hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I talked over with family and stuff, and by family I mean AJ, my wife, and she was like, yeah, I'm good with it. Just don't let's just take him down, tap him out. don't turn him into brawls. And I was like,
let's not
that's not my style anyway.
Yeah,
right. But man, I was so small. Like I weighed in at like 155.
Did you lose a lot of weight after getting shot?
Yeah, man. So like I couldn't do much of anything workout wise. Like I was on a restriction of like a 5-pound lifting limit for a couple months, and then it was like 20 pounds. But at one point my jaw actually locked almost completely shut. So I was eating like baby food and a lot of protein shakes and stuff like that.
Why did it lock?
So I got shot in my left cheek, and just because of all the the damage in there, I don't know what exactly caused it, but this muscle on the top of my head just contracted and it pulled my jaw shut.
Yeah.
So like they were actually going to go in and like remove part of the muscle and just put implants and stuff in my face when the muscles atrophied. Like it was a big ordeal. And luckily during one of my eye surgeries, they just ripped my jaw completely open and it kind of fixed it. So yeah, there was that. But yeah, I got down to 150 pounds of just horribly atrophied muscle. Like I was like skinny and just had no definition or anything. It was, and real pasty because I wasn't outside much.
What was your recovery like? I mean, in your motivation, like what kind of dealing with something that's that really life changing, and you're fortunate to be alive. To have the idea of like not just like I don't want to just like make it through this thing. I want to fight, and I want to like keep training and stay and kind of get back to some normalcy in my life. Like what was that process for you like mentally and then physically as well? Obviously physically you can't imagine not being able to eat and having to be restricted on what you can do. Like how did you kind of get yourself recovered enough to actually get to a point where you thought, well, I'm going to take one more fight?
Yeah. So man, honestly, I don't know what it would have looked like without jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Jiu-jitsu was kind of, it was what I had to actually get back to. And really it was 100% of my recovery. Like it wasn't like I was hitting the gym working out or anything like that. Like I was on the mat 11 days later. I got shot on February 20th, Indiana Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy opened March 3rd. So, and I wasn't rolling. I wasn't training by any means, but I was in there laying on the side of the mat, drooling on myself going, no, put your hand here, So, but it gave me something to go and do instead of just sitting around the house feeling sorry for myself. And then, once I was able to kind of move around, I'd move around a little bit and I would just kind of follow doctor restrictions. Like there was actually a long point when I wasn't allowed to get choked because of the damage to my eye. So yeah. So at one point, so I have 2 steel plates. They reconstructed my cheekbone. And so 2 different doctors, right? So that doctor was like, hey, you can get punched again. You can get your head smooshed again. Like, that's great. It's probably stronger than your natural bone. So at that point, I went in and started actually training, and I was even rolling. And just no chokes. Like if somebody get near my neck, I just tapped. And most people knew like, hey, you can't choke James because he might die. But so yeah, like literally like the day I went in, it was like a Thursday. I had my eye doctor appointment. He's like, hey, you're good to go. You can get choked again. You can squeeze. You can strain hard when you poop. Like all the restrictions are lifted. And I was like, awesome. So next day we drove down to Tennessee and I competed in a tournament on Saturday. Did okay. I won my division, got third in the open, and then Ray Casillas broke my arm because he's a bully. But
he broke
it. I mean, it popped and made noise and it hurt. It still hurts, you know.
But you were probably young,
20-something years later.
You probably still try to like fight after. You're like, no, I'm not gonna tap to you. Screw this, you know, like
Chewy. I would never not tap in a tournament. That's offensive.
I mean, well, I mean, you wouldn't when you're like maybe in your early 20s.
Right? Dude, I still don't. I get hurt all the time.
And not me. Like, I'm sensitive. Like they get something wrapped up, I'm like, you got me. I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I were smarter. Yeah, no, honestly, man, like it was. He got me in like I don't even know what to call it, like the Kimura, but with the legs when you're like Heiskatami.
Yeah.
And he wrapped it up, and I got out, and he wrapped it up, and I got out, and he wrapped it up, and it popped, and like he was cool. He stopped, and he kind of looked at me, and the ref looked at me, and I was like, yeah, we'll just call this one, guys. Thanks for caring. But yeah, so you know, I was back to jiu-jitsu. I was training, and I don't even know how I heard about it. Pre-internet, guys, I don't know how we heard about anything. Like
facts.
Yeah, like,
stuff just got. I mean, the internet. I mean, well, so I mean, I had the internet, but stuff would just get around from people. Like it traveled, right? Yeah,
but so somehow word got along that hey, they're doing some fights, and they have an 8-man tournament, 155 pounds. I think it was actually 158 was the cutoff, but it just kind of I don't know, like it was just like, man, let me see if I can do this. And, you know, everybody's like, man, it's not even been a year, you know, you still have problems. And I was like, I know, but, you know, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to be able to do it again, you know, most likely, or I'm not going to do it again. So I was a little bit it kind of lit a fire, you know what I mean? And so like, that was really, I almost used the fight as a motivator to get back in shape or to really kind of rehab. So yeah, I cleaned up my diet a little more than it already was. I was already down in weight, so I didn't really have to cut at all. Yeah, just started training harder, started doing a lot more kickboxing, into takedowns, a little more wrestling, you know, and yeah, it was just I used it as a motivator to train and get back in shape, and it really did. You know, I went from being actually I take that back. I did have to cut weight because I was 150 pounds. And I ended up getting probably back up to about 165. So I ended up having to cut weight again for the first time ever, which actually kind of screwed me because I was like, how do you cut weight? I don't know. You just cut out all your calories. Don't eat any fat. Don't eat any carbs. Stay away from sugar. Like, you know what I mean? I had no idea. Like somebody just said something and I was like, oh, that makes sense. And so yeah, I cut weight and it didn't super affect me until the fight. And then I was like, I'm real sluggish and can't move. And every time someone touches me, it sounds like a grenade's going off in my head.
Man.
But
what was so what was that first off, how old were you at the time? I'm curious.
I was time of the fight, I was 21.
Yeah, young 20s, man. He just like, I'm gonna risk everything because I need to do something.
Yeah.
You start to get older. You're like, I don't know about that. How the fights? How did the fight or fights end up going for you?
Okay. So it was again, weird rules, man. I've never fought under any like cool like normal unified rules. So this term actually was like everything was legal. No groin strikes, no biting, no headbutts. So soccer kicks, knees to the down opponent, all that fun stuff. Which actually, it was fun. You know, it's fun kneeing guys in the head on the ground. But yeah, so they had 2 5-minute rounds and then a 3-minute overtime. And again, the overtime it didn't matter who won the rounds. It was just if there needed to be a third round, it was just 3 minutes instead. But I fought a real tough guy named Mike Willis first round. Actually, at the time, he was Mac Danzig's coach. Mac later went on to win Ultimate Fighter and had a decent UFC career. So Mike and I went into the third, and I ended up tapping him with a triangle, I believe. But he actually, man, like right off the bat, because again, like everybody was like, no striking. We're just going to take him down and tap him out. And so I get in, pop, pop, shoot. I get double unders. I'm like, sweet. I'm like 5 seconds into the fight, you know, and I'm right where I want to be. And he got a tie clinch, and I pushed him up against the ropes. So it was in a ring, not a cage. And he was able to stick his butt out through the ropes to create enough space and kneed me right in the mouth. And man, he hit me hard enough that I went black. I thought I was knocked out. Like I remember waking up and I hear the crowd like going nuts, and I was like,
"Oh, you had that flash!"
Holy yeah! I mean, it was just a quick flash, but I was like, I just got knocked out in like 10 seconds. Yeah. And then like I feel him like snap me over, and I'm like, nope, I'm still on my feet. And then he hits me with another knee, and yeah. And after that, it was like I dominated the fight pretty well. But
nice.
Like right off the bat, man, he caught me, and I was like, oh goodness. I won that one.
That's a weird feeling, isn't it? Where you have that, that like where it's like everything goes black for a second, and then you wake up like, and you're like not sure exactly where you're at for like a split second. You know, you're I'm back.
Yeah,
and you're cognizant of the fact that you went out for a second. It's a little freaky.
Yeah, man, I've been choked out in jiu-jitsu matches and woken up somewhere completely different. Like I was on top, and now this guy's in my guard. I don't know. All right, we're just gonna keep going. But yeah, so yeah, almost got knocked out. Ended up with stitches inside my mouth. But yeah, so second fight, fought a pretty good wrestler, and I think I tapped him in like a minute and a half. We had a weird reset. And then I went to the final with a real tough guy named Nick Mitchell. Like at the time, we were both 4-stripe blue belts. I believe he had actually won Gracie Nationals in '98. I'd won him in '99. So like jiu-jitsu wise, we were real comparable. He was way more experienced in MMA than I was. And same thing. Went to the third round. I squeaked out first and second round. And then third round, I felt really good. I was like, cool. I got the takedown I wanted at the end of the second. Like I'm getting this guy's timing down a little better. Third round, I go out, pump a couple jabs, boom, clinch, like perfectly. Go for the takedown, hit an inside trip, and he wizarded me. And so this is where like the soccer kicks kind of screwed me. I fell face first, and he's on my blind side. So I didn't realize he had actually fallen with me. And I thought he was like, I thought we separated. I thought he was on his feet. And I was like, man, I'm just going to spin and grab his ankles. I don't want to get soccer kicked, and I don't want to be on my back anymore. And when I turned, he was under me. And so he literally just jumps up, locks in a guillotine. And man, those MMA gloves, they were like all in my trachea, and my mouthpiece spun, and I was belly down to the mat. Like it was the worst possible scenario. And he finished the guillotine. And I was like, sat there and cried about it for a minute. I was like, I just lost my retirement fight. Stupid. But yeah, so that was cool. It was fun. It was a good night. And then honestly, man, like it was one of those weird nights, you know, like, so he fought a kid first round. Man, I believe the kid's like a 14-year-old kid. Like I think he was 14, maybe 16, but I think the kid was 14. A guy named Ricky Olson.
Had their like parents sign off for him or something?
Yeah. And literally Nick walks out, like knees this kid in the head twice and has 20 seconds, and that's it. And then his next opponent just was like, nope, I'm out, and left.
What?
So
oh man. You
know, at the time, like by the final, he had like 20 seconds of ring time, and I was like right around like 12 or 13 minutes already. Not that, you know, that would have mattered necessarily, but yeah.
So here's something you said, and this is something that's always hard to explain to people because, like, so when we think about our day-to-day lives, right? We don't get to like fight people. We don't get to like go out and punch someone or, you know, knee someone in the face or elbow them or any of that kind of stuff.
It's so unfortunate.
Yeah, right. Some people need it. But when you fight, like I remember fighting, and you know, there's this I don't want to say it's like you enjoy it, but there's something fun about fighting. Like, and again, maybe everybody's a little bit wired a little differently, of course, but like you know, I remember like fighting and like getting hit and hitting someone back and having some sort of strange sense of enjoyment about it. Like you said, like kneeing someone in the face is kind of fun. That's what you said. It's like, it's kind of fun. Like I remember like kneeing someone in the gut and then like just seeing him fold over. I was like, oh, that was neat. You know, like it's such a strange thing. Or even you punch someone and you feel their face bounce off of your glove just right. And you knew that you dropped them. It's a strange thing, you know? You know, and I don't know, it's always hard to explain to people because it sounds awful. It sounds barbaric with the way our culture is. But there is something very primitive about us that likes that fighting. I mean, even me getting hit sometimes. I mean, I'd get hit in the face. I'm like, yeah, all right, let's keep going, you know?
Oh, yeah.
For you, like when you, and again, you may not have a good answer because it's a weird primal thing to sort of unpack, but when you say it's fun to knee someone, how, like how do you mean by that?
Oh, man. Well, like you said, it's primal. Like, honestly, it is in all of us, right? Like we all kind of need that, like, I don't know, that primal outlet, right? Like, but also, you know, we're jiu-jitsu guys primarily. And even in the gym, as we're sparring, we've got our boxing gloves on and stuff. Like, how often do you just get to just knee somebody in the face, like hard with bad intentions, right?
Sure.
How often do you get to elbow somebody? So it's one of those things where like, you can train all this stuff, you know, like I know guys are like, oh man, I only train for self-defense. I'm like, cool, bro. How often do you get to defend yourself? Like if you're practicing self-defense all the time, you're probably the one in the wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that, you know, especially as martial artists, we get to practice, right? Like I've never headbutted anyone. It makes me want to headbutt someone. You know what I mean?
Curiosity. Like I wonder how this works.
Just out of curiosity. Like I've trained it, but I'm probably never going to get to use it.
Headbutts are they're a bad weapon too, and
yes.
like, meaning like it's a really effective to headbutt someone.
Right. What's the like Lithway? Is that right? It's like Lethway. Yeah, it's like Thai boxing, but they throw the headbutts in there. Like I would not want to do that. Like I don't want to get headbutted. Like just let me headbutt you once, and then we'll just be like, all right, I'll hit me a couple times or something. But yeah, it's one of those things where like you train it. You kind of want to use it, you know, like I'll be messing around in class and I'm like, man, it's been a really long time since I punched someone because I don't train MMA anymore. I don't really train kickboxing anymore. I teach a little kickboxing, but I don't spar. My neck got real bad back in 2009 as a result of the shooting. But it took like 9 years before the injury in my neck manifested. So I've got like real bad spinal stenosis in C5, 6, and 7. They actually wanted to go in and fuse 3 of my vertebrae, and I declined that. So pretty good now.
Have a neck that doesn't move, like
Well, and that was the guy I went to. Like he worked on UFC fighters and Strikeforce vets and all this stuff, and he's like, "I'll hook you up, bro. I'll fix you, no problem." I go up, go down. And he's like, "Nothing I can do for you. Got to throw 3, you know." Got to fuse 3 of your vertebrae and you know, and he couldn't turn his neck. He's like, it's no problem, man. I've had the same thing done. He's like, you'll never do jiu-jitsu again. And your wife probably shouldn't hug you around the neck afterwards, but it'll be fine.
That's right.
like, that's not fine. That doesn't seem like it's going to improve the quality of my life. And I want the quality of my life improved.
Well, I think it really, if you can handle the pain and if it's not a safety issue, like I mean, if it's like, hey, I'm going to get hit in the head or in the neck, and then I may lose function in my arms or be paralyzed in some way, it can be that kind of scenario. That would be probably, you know, a reason to. But if it's like, man, I'm just in pain and I've got, you know, I think we all have some issues with our necks at this point, being choked and having our necks cranked on all the time. But yeah, you're probably right. Like that, I think a lot of doctors don't quite understand the desire, like the meaningfulness of what we do, and then also like what exactly it entails, because a lot of them be like, well, yeah, just don't do that anymore, and that's not an option for many people. Especially you being a head jiu-jitsu instructor, that this is what you do, and you have to have time on the mats to kind of hone your own skills. So like I think there's just a big gap in kind of understanding as well from athletes and you know, doctors.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, you know, I went to this guy specifically because he worked with MMA, like professional MMA fighters.
Yeah.
And man, just talking to him, he was like, well, you can still do kickboxing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, like I teach jujitsu. Like what part of that don't you understand? And I'm like, how in the world could I get punched and kicked in the face with a bad neck, but I couldn't grapple? It doesn't make sense. But what I found, man, was like, actually, like it's that impact, that kind of whiplashy motion that fires my neck up and makes it hurt more. Like I can roll around all day and like, you know, I don't have like limited mobility really. Getting my neck cranked on doesn't really hurt necessarily, but that quick impact, like even I was rolling the other day. I think I swept somebody and we came up and we kind of collided heads, and I just made a mental note. Like it didn't hurt. It was, you know, we're both fine. It was just a little thud. But I made a mental note, like, hey, I took a headbutt just to see. And of course, the very next day, like for 2 days, my neck was real sore, kind of immobile, and like I had to like really work it out. And but yeah, so but I'm good.
How have you trained with it? You know, training for 24 years now, so you've had some, you know, some injuries, some broken bones, this and that. How's your training kind of evolved now? Like how many days a week are you training? How hard do you train? And how do you kind of coach your classes? I mean, what's the training look like for your school?
Every day porrada. Every day. No. So yeah, I've been real fortunate with injuries. I've not had a lot of injuries. So like even my neck, as bad as it was from getting shot, not necessarily from jujitsu or whatever. I did tear a meniscus in my left knee. Like I think I was still a brown belt. So probably about 15, 16 years ago. And then like an idiot, I just never had it looked at. It would get bad and then it would get good and bad and good. And I rode on it for like 12 years.
It was also a lot harder for you to get it looked at because you couldn't just get an MRI like the rest of us, like a normal person, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because you got that bullet floating around in there, right?
Yeah, it doesn't float too much, but we want to avoid the floating part. I think that's why
we want to avoid getting it around giant magnets.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they could do like CT scan or something.
So yeah, that's what I ended up having done with my neck. Was they did the myelogram. So they did CT and X-ray with the dye injected into my spinal fluid, which is horribly painful. I did not expect the pain that came with that. But they, you know, it's like extra fluid in your spinal column. You're like, oh God, bad. And then they're like, hey, also don't move for 2 days because it might rupture where we punctured it. So, then, you know, and they had a little Band-Aid on my back, like normal, like little Band-Aid. I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna hold it in. It's gonna hold it in.
Yeah, you'll just be leaking spinal fluid out your back. It's
right?
Not a big deal. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, so I can do like the myelogram thing. But yeah, man, if I'm ever in like a major car accident or something and like they throw me on we don't know is the problem. Like I might be absolutely fine. But when I was having my neck looked at before I went to see the guy who did the myelogram, a doctor told me to go get an MRI. And he's like, well, as long as the titanium in your face is under 10 years old, you'll be okay. And I go, well, it's about 12. And he's like, man, it should be fine.
Yeah.
Like you just contradicted what you told me, bro.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, we don't know what kind of bullet it, like it's a 9mm. We don't know what it's made out of, like how old that was, like nothing. And he's like, oh, you're okay. So I called my doctor, the one that did the surgery, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And he goes, oh, your titanium's absolutely fine. He's like, I put that in myself. You're good. I don't know about the bullet. That's kind of dangerous. And so I took x-rays and a CT to the radiologist. And I said, hey, man, listen, before you decide you're going to put me on an MRI machine, please look at these. Here's the scenario. And the guy was gone under 10 minutes, and he comes back and he goes, look, man, don't ever let anybody put you in an MRI. Like, wow. He goes, we don't know. He goes, you're either absolutely perfect or you die right there. He goes, you'll die. He goes, if we turn that machine on and that metal's the wrong type, you're dead. He goes, you'll bleed out.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not like you can feel discomfort and you get out of the machine, which is exactly what the guy that told me to go get the MRI said. And he was like, oh, if you feel uncomfortable, just get out.
So as it's being ripped out of your head, right?
Holy shit, man.
Yeah.
That's so crazy to me. I was like, you might be all right, or we can do this other imaging that will probably do just fine, and it's not going to risk your life. You're not going to die, you know. By the way, I didn't know you had the bullet was lodged. I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, so it literally hit me directly in the cheek. Like, man, like the angle could not have been more perfect for me, I guess. But yeah, it hit me directly in the cheek, and it just drove into my cheekbone and stopped.
Oh,
so it's basically as center in my skull as you can possibly get without hitting any major anything. Like, I missed my carotid artery by less than a centimeter. Didn't hit my brain. Like, I've got. I mean, overall, man, like I said, I'm blind in my left eye, and I have some problems with my left ear. But outside of that, like, no brain damage, no no weird bleeding from anything. Like, you know, the neck isn't necessarily from the bullet; it's from the impact, right? Like, it hit me hard enough, it knocked me over into my passenger seat, and yeah, so a little bit of that like side whiplash.
So as far as jiu-jitsu goes, like seeing where it is today, like I always love asking you're an OG, you're one of the old dudes. You know, you've been around forever. Like, do you imagine it would be where it's at? You know, the evolution of it, the prevalence, and also like you started a gym, you know, 23 years ago, 22 years, a long time ago, and you know, making a living as a gym owner is very, very much unheard of or very difficult as far as jiu-jitsu goes. And you making a career as a grappler is very difficult. Like, did you imagine it would be the way it is now? We'd be on a podcast talking about how jiu-jitsu's evolved. Is that
Never.
something? Yeah.
Never. Yeah, man. Like, I always, you know, like I come from the era of the early UFCs. Like, I always thought it'd be this underground thing, and you know, just a few cool people would do it, and now it's super mainstream. I love it. Like, it's awesome. Like, I love being able to just turn on my TV and there's jiu-jitsu everywhere. You know, like I can log on to the UFC app or Flow Grappling or any number of other things and watch like these awesome events with, you know, just amazing grapplers. And the jiu-jitsu today is so far beyond what it was 20, 30 years ago, you know?
Says you.
Says me.
So this new school jiu-jitsu is no good.
It's not self-defense.
It's not.
You know, you get that question all the time. It's so weird.
I'm just kidding.
Well, I know you are, but we get that question.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Q&As, it's like, would you do old school jiu-jitsu self-defense or would you do new school jiu-jitsu? And I'm like, and Chewy's always like, do them both, do it all. It's all jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, no. Well, I'll be honest with you, and it kind of goes back to something you said earlier. There's a lot of the self-defense stuff I don't agree with. I don't think it would work because it's like it's so akin to like watching like traditional martial arts demonstrations where like you got to think about this. Like, so for instance, Frank Dukes back in the day, one of the reasons why I'm here today, even though he's a complete fraud, he can make outlandish claims about all the stuff that he did, and there was no way to substantiate it because, well, one, it didn't exist, but two, there was no like ubiquitous video or ability to share information like there's now. Now you have, everybody's got a phone. They've got the ability to share information at will. And so every time there's a fight somewhere, you get to see it happening, right? Yeah. And guess what? Fights don't happen, very rarely does a fight happen with a guy going, I'm going to grab you with two hands on the throat. Like, I mean, it doesn't happen that way. It's like all of a sudden dudes erupt and they start punching at each other, swinging, and then it's absolute chaos. And you've just got to be able to adapt. And there's some things that work, like clinch work and things like that are pretty safe bets that they're going to be useful. But like doing some weird like wrist lock thing when it's like, maybe you can try it, but if it doesn't work, it's going to get bad super quick.
Yeah. I think the stuff that like the self-defense in my head is like, the 2-on-1 grip, like Kimura grip type stuff, like the stuff that like maybe like the Blue Jitsu guys showed. That's to me like basic self-defense stuff. None of that like disarming or knife disarmament or gun disarmament. None of that stuff. Like, so I guess my idea on it's a little bit different. Just some of the, I think self-defense jiu-jitsu is like the stuff you learn early on. Your basic takedown. That's the kind of stuff that I attribute to it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Carlos Gracie, head of Gracie Baja, like he said, basic jiu-jitsu is for guys that don't know jiu-jitsu. Advanced jiu-jitsu is for guys that know jiu-jitsu, right? Like, I can see if I walked into a jiu-jitsu gym and I never learned a takedown and I never learned a guard pass and all we did was berimbolo, rubber guard stuff all day long. You know what I mean? Like, and that was the entire style of me and everyone else in the gym. And then I get in an altercation, and somebody punches me in the face and then kicks me in the head while I'm down. Like, I can understand how, like, yeah, you probably should have focused on some self-defense. But to me, and Chew, you said it, man, like the old school stuff that they show is like this self-defense, the stuff that, you know, like Alio was doing. That's the exact same stuff that's in all these martial arts that those guys said didn't work.
Right. You know, and you can't, and like you were talking about, like, can you practice that? Can you do that live? Like, because if you're not like actually doing it live and doing some fighting of some sort, like, right, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Eye gouges, groin strikes. You can't practice that stuff. Right. So to me, self-defense looks like proper distancing, hands up, maybe some basic kickboxing if I need to, normal clinch, take the fight to the ground, dominate my position, where I can effectively attack and not be attacked. So we're talking like what? Mount, side control, knee on belly, rear mount. And I'm going to finish the fight. And that might be with striking once we're on the ground. That might be with a choke. Might be with an armbar or whatever.
Well, it's like the Gracie in action tapes. I mean, like, you know, if you watch a Gracie in action tape where they're fighting these old, you know, traditional martial artists or people that were untrained, and then you were to go like flip on your phone and go to like, you know, YouTube and put in like street fights, they almost look the same, whereas basically like you have one guy that's trained and one guy that isn't in the jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, and basically it's this controlling distance, getting in, getting the clinch, taking the person down, getting control of the person, and then from there basically, you know, chipping away at them until you either get a submission or until they like just completely fold up and give up.
Yeah, that's my envisioning. Yeah,
I will say I used a Aikido style wrist lock in a I guess you call it a self-defense scenario. I was removing a guy from a party. He was much larger and also drunk, which always helps when you're doing wrist locks. But you know, it was nice to be able to like grab this wrist lock and put him on his knees and escort him out. So that was cool. And then Eugene, you said something, you know, you talked about like the gun and the knife stuff. Man, if you look at like the old school stuff they taught, and then look at even the stuff that like Henner and Huron are doing now, like it's completely changed. Like they've got like this whole like tactical jiu-jitsu stuff, and I'm all for that, man. Like one of my black belts, Mick Williams, he's like a SWAT guy, but he's got certifications and got like JKD and Eskrima and like all this other stuff. But I bring him up all the time, man, like to teach like knife defense, and it's very basic. And, you know, he'll tell you, he's like, man, all this like parrying and swiveling and, you know, exchanging positions. He's like, that gets you cut. He's like, every person I know survived a knife fight does a 2-on-1 wrist grip. And then he's like, here's how we go from there. So like everything he does leads to this one particular grip, a disarmament, and get him on the ground. Right. And I was at a concert one night, and a guy threatened to stab me. And it's probably less than a month after I did this like seminar with him on knife disarmament. And fortunately the guy didn't have a knife, but as soon as he said he was going to stab me, I was like, boom, right into position. Like I'm controlling his wrist and his elbow. I've got my forehead, you know, like wrestling posture, and I'm watching his free arm, which isn't his, you know, which was his left arm. So just automatically, I'm assuming the guy's right-handed, but I'm not taking that for granted. But it was nice to go, if this guy does have a knife, this is exactly where I'm going to be and how I'm going to handle it. And I went right into that. And, you know, fortunately from that position, I was able to just kind of de-escalate the situation. And, you know, concert, guy's drunk, and it's a misunderstanding, but, yeah, it was cool. So like, I am a fan of the, you know, the knife disarmament type stuff. Just in the simple fact of like, yeah, I might get cut, but if somebody does pull a knife, I want to have a goal, right? Or if somebody's close range with a gun, like I want to have something to go to, you know, like maybe it's, hey, here's my wallet, have a great day, but maybe this guy's just going to pull the trigger. Yeah. So, you know, as far as like just being a complete martial artist, like I think we should know a little bit of that. And the realistic stuff, again, I'm not a fan of like, you see the guy in like the urban camo on YouTube, and he's like doing like flying scissors through the air. Yeah. You know, I definitely want to learn that. That's amazing.
Well, I think it comes down to, are you staying true to the methodology that makes the martial arts superior? So the things that make combat sports, combat martial arts superior to their elder brethren in most like fighting aspects, like when we talk about effectiveness, right? Because there are forms of like karate and stuff like that that are effective, like the Kyokushin and stuff like that. Like those are effective forms because they're fighting. They're actually sparring with each other, hitting each other, opposed to just doing katas all day. You know, when you get into jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, all that stuff, you know, there's actual, let's try this out against someone who's resisting. Now, again, it's not like you can replicate everything, every situation, but you get to the point where you can actually try it against a resisting body. And if someone's ever been in a street fight altercation, what you find is a lot of times, you know, you're much better at improvising on the fly because you're used to the chaos of a, you know, grappling match or a kickboxing match or an MMA fight or whatever it might be, and you're used to just, you know, making things up on the fly if you have to. You know, so again, there's plenty of good self-defense stuff out there. It just goes back to like, are you practicing actually live? Like, did someone like get a chance to actually hit you a little bit? Like, you know, not knock you out unconscious or anything, but did they give you enough to where they could pop you in the mouth a little bit, just so that you take notice that, oh, you weren't controlling distance properly, you know? Or did they have a chance to even use like a fake knife and like try to like get there, and then you actually had to wrestle them live for that knife, like using 100% of your muscle to try to stop it, you know, that kind of stuff. Where I think when you get away from that, then you're basically playing in the realm that we as jiu-jitsu practitioners, a lot of times especially when I first started, we would make fun of other martial arts. We were like, you guys don't even train. How do you know this works? You don't even use it against anyone, against live situations. You're just, it's theory. And I think the whole thing about, you know, jiu-jitsu that makes it work is because even though we're in the realm of like, say, the sport and things like that, it's still a realistic situation where there's a person that's resisting 100% trying to stop it, and you're using it against them, which then allows you then where if you ever have to use something, even a fragment of that movement against someone in a unrelated situation, like on the streets, you're going to be more apt to do so because you're used to dealing with live resisting opponents.
Yeah, and you're going to have the confidence to do it, right? Like if I've never done any of that, then even if I'm completely physically capable, there's the mental edge there, or not there. You know, I'm not going to have the confidence. I'm gonna freeze and get stabbed to death or whatever. You know, like
neurologically, your body won't be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the attractiveness of jiu-jitsu as well, like being able to learn a technique and then actually do some live rolling and actually see if it works, or problem solve and figure it out. And that's you're able to literally put it into practice in a safe way, and that's awesome. I mean, that's I think that's what proves that jiu-jitsu is effective. And that's what kind of, when you look at the Gracie in action tapes, that was the thing that was their selling point. That was their marketing thing. It's like, look, we're doing this thing I'm showing you. You want to know how to do this? Like, this is how effective it is. So that's kind of the main thing. I think is a lot of selling points for it. And plus it's fun. You know, it's fun, and you can relatively do it in a way that doesn't destroy your body. I mean, that's very different. I mean, there's a large gradient to that, but you can do it, you know, and a lot of people older can do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think it's funny too. Like you'll get guys that have never trained in anything, and they're like, well, do you think you could, you know, take me down, and you think you could armbar me? And it's like, yes. And I can say that not in a cocky way, but with 100% confidence. Sure. And they're like, well, how do you know? I'm like, because I literally do this to people every single day. And I do it to people bigger than me and stronger than me. And I do it to guys that actually know what they're doing, and you don't know what you're doing. So it's going to, like, I'm going to have to try not to tap you out. Like it's going to be that easy. I could do it with my eyes closed and half asleep. Like, but yeah, like jiu-jitsu is just awesome, man. It's, you know, Joe Rogan said it's like a superpower, and it really is, just because, you know, like the point is, like, we're doing it on live people that don't want us to do it. And you're figuring it out. You get to learn the technique, you get to drill it, you get to practice it during live rolling, and tear it apart, and, you know, make it fail over and over and over, and then get better at it. And then you get to the point where you don't even have to think about doing it. It just kind of happens.
Mm-hmm. So what just to end it, what instructionals you said you're doing? You've got some instructionals out, and then maybe it's not something, you have a seminar on the way. I think something with the loop choke.
Oh yeah, so
That's fun.
That's actually tomorrow. So this
Awesome.
coming Saturday. So
Where's that at?
one of my affiliates in Canton, Ohio, East Coast Martial Arts. One of my black belts, Chad Kuhn. So I'm doing a loop choke seminar at his place, and then it's sold out.
I should be there.
You should come. He probably won't let you in.
You can't
and
come,
then
Eugene.
one of my other affiliates in Ohio, I'm doing a seminar at his place the next day. I don't have it completely mapped out yet. I will have an outline before I get there, though. I'm not going to just show up and teach. But he said a lot of his guys are newer, so we probably will stick with probably do some guard passing, some side control, some basic positioning type stuff, and do a little plethora. Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, so I'm coming out with a loop choke instructional. So I've got one that's kind of out on the market. It's a bunch of seminars I taught, kind of pushed together. Well, it's a loop choke seminar, and then a couple other clips from different seminars with loop chokes. But I sat down, I filmed about 30 or 40 techniques for a new one. So that'll be releasing whenever I get off my butt and edit it. I think I filmed it like a year ago. So
Do you have this available in VHS?
I can make a special one for you guys if you'd like. I still have a couple VCRs. So
I got one in storage somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know.
Actually, the only one of the few things that I have from my old competing is I've got a competition from when I was a blue belt and I did the ego, like one of the very first egos way back in the day in like 2000. I guess it was like maybe the second or third one was like 2005.
Yeah, the second one then.
Yeah.
Those are fun.
Is that the one where Joel grabbed you by the face for
Yes.
slapping him?
One of my favorite memories, like, as a young dumb kid and going with Joel, and Joel was like bigger at the time and he was fighting at the time, and I mean Joel's already he's already a rowdy dude, and I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I think I slapped him in the face and I was gonna go for a takedown, but I just ended up slapping him in the face. And he just grabbed me by my face afterwards and like pointed. He was like, "You don't slap me," and I was like, "Yes, sir." But we had a battle afterwards. I remember I was done with the match and Joel hurt his back during the match, and we'd went into overtime. And I remember I was laying there like just so tired, and then you came up to me. It's like, "Hey man, you got to go again. Joel hurt his back." I'm like, "What?" I ended up winning the division and like didn't submit anyone else, but I had like 4 more matches.
Oh my god!
So it was just like going forever, but it was interesting those times.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Awesome,
that was a good event, man. We had
you guys had a great pro tournament going.
Yeah,
because you guys had it was like you had Chris Moriarty.
Moriarty ended up winning the heavyweight because he showed up late and he wouldn't return any of my calls or anything. So I was like, man, he's just not making it to middle. So I filled the spot, and then he shows up and I was like, dude, I just filled your spot. But yeah, he ended up winning he won the heavyweight. And we had a lot of good guys.
Who was the dude you guys had there? I can't remember his name. Was it he was like super I don't know, the guys had long hair and stuff. Was it Matamoros?
Henry Matamoros, lightweight.
Maybe it was him. I don't know. There was a one dude that was just like wrecking dudes, but he kind of had this like caveman look going on at the time, and it was just like tearing dudes up.
Probably Henry.
Yeah, Wilson Hayes was in one.
Wilson,
of
super Wilson and Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall was the final in that division.
Yeah,
that was a great division, man. We had tons of guys. Pedro Viano was in that one.
What was that?
Tulio Peroni.
2009,
that was
2010,
9 maybe.
I don't know.
Well, he did. I saw Wilson at it was like a super fight. He did like one of the super fights of the tournament. I did a tournament and
more recently, right?
Yeah, it was probably
he did a super fight
6 years ago. 5
years
ago.
Yeah, that was one of the guys from Scorpion Fight Systems, Christian Woodmansey, was training him. So that's actually how I met Christian. Was he brought that guy down? I was trying to get Christian to compete, but I couldn't find anybody. Couldn't find anybody for him. So
that's cool, man. You guys always put on great tournaments. We had AJ on the podcast a while back, and it was just fun.
Oh yeah.
She told us kind of about the genesis of your all's tournaments and running a gym and all that stuff. It was just very cool. How she was just so much behind the scenes on a lot of this stuff and a big part of it. And that's, you kind of need somebody that's kind of a little bit crazy about jiu-jitsu and kind of about this dream that you guys have, because you know, like she said, you guys were like willing to sell your house. I don't even know if you did sell your house or not, but you are going to give everything up to keep the gym going and a lot of wild stuff.
Yeah, there was a point, man. Like it got pretty bad. Like we actually lost our house. We had to foreclose on our house and everything. Like we legit would have been homeless. Her former stepdad he had bought a new house and was moving out. And he rented us this little teeny tiny house that was his for like $400 a month. Actually, we would just pay him after the egos. We'd run an ego and then just give him a bunch of money and be like, hey, there's our last 4 months or, you know, whatever. Yeah, it was crazy, man. Like it took a while before our school actually took off, before we understood like how to like actually make things happen, like business wise,
how to run a business. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's, you know, I always thought like, oh man, I'm the only guy teaching jiu-jitsu. Everybody wants to learn jiu-jitsu. And then they show up and they're like, this is hard. Oh, I'm going to go get a black belt in karate. But yeah, it's.
Speaking of egos, I know that, you know, with COVID and stuff, I know things have been a little squirrely, you know, I mean, I know it's affected restaurants a lot. Like, you know, tonight Jess and I are going to get dinner, and the restaurant closes an hour early because of COVID restrictions.
I thought you were making a joke. You're making a
joke?
No,
I'm being dead. Oh, I am making this. I am making slightly. Well, the restrictions sometimes are a joke as far as like restaurants can't be open past 11.
Make sure you wear your mask between bites. Okay.
Okay, we'll do.
Safety first.
I'm just gonna I'm gonna just like suck everything and get it ground down into a straw that I can suck through my mask.
You can put 2 masks on, one on top and bottom.
There you go. But with all the restrictions, what's it looking like? Because usually you guys usually there's an ego in April.
Yeah. You know. So we actually attempted to run one late last year, and we decided like, hey, we need 100 registered by whatever the date was, however far out. And I think we had like 65 or something like that. So we canceled the event, and then of course like 900 people message us going, "Why is there no ego?"
Yeah.
Well, because you didn't register for it when we told you to. Yeah. But yes, we didn't do one in April, and we're talking like almost daily. I'm asked when we're going to run another one, and it's kind of up in the air. You know, AJ's running her women's role model camp, which is just huge. Like they're almost sold out. I think the capacity is like 250 for this one. I know they maybe have 10 spots left. So, but a lot of her focus is on that. You know, we're running 2 academies right now. My first black belt, Matt Strata, he opened one like 7 years ago, and we bought it from him like 2 years ago. You know, we've got just a lot of irons in the fire, and the ego it takes a lot. It takes a lot of staffing, because we don't just go, hey guys, come ref. You know, we have very specific people that we train to ref with our rules, and you know, with the tables and stuff. Like you got to be trained on the system, and it's a lot to put into it. And you know, when you're asking 30 people to like clear that day, and you're like, we kind of can't run it without you all exactly being, you know, all on the same schedule.
Yeah, and organizing like 5 people to do anything is tough. So organizing 30 is incredibly hard.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I hope to do one again. We've talked about maybe running one this year near the end, but yeah, right now it's still up in the air.
Awesome, dude. Well, James, thanks, man. Thanks for the time. Best of luck with everything, and it's always fun chatting with you, man.
All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast with James. Again, that was a fun one. I love talking about the old stuff. We'll definitely have to get more like old school guys on here, just to talk about the way things used to be. Like the idea of like having to get a map and driving like 9 hours to a competition, and the fact that back in the day there was not like the idea of being a full-time competitor. It just wasn't a thing.
Nope.
Like everybody was doing MMA. That's what you had to do. And it's changed so much. And even instructionals, you know, you can get videos like on demand. You don't have to like whatever. And I remember back in the day watching grainy VHS tapes, or the few things that I could find online of streaming media, which you got to remember the resolution back then was really rough online. So like, you know, it's funny, like if you find a video that was released like back then, like back in like say the early 2000s, and then you watch on a computer screen now, it's like, oh my God, it's like, you know, 360 resolution. And you're like, oh dude, I can like, there's so many dots, you know,
pixelated.
It's so super pixelated. And then now it's like, you know, it just doesn't even make sense. But back then, I mean, it's like you were like looking, trying to figure out what was he grabbing there, you know? It's just a different time, and it's a great time. I'm jealous sometimes of you guys that are starting. Although I enjoyed I enjoyed doing it back in the day when it was kind of underground.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when I started, I think '08, it was kind of still really.
It was still very like
still
it
like
was still in
nobody
infancy.
really knew. Like there was, nobody really knew what you were doing.
People knew they knew what MMA was at that point,
Yes.
but they didn't really know about jiu-jitsu. They didn't really understand it.
Explain. You would say, "Well, I do jujitsu." And like, "Oh, what is that like?" MMA. First, they'd say, "Is it like karate?" And then they'd say, "What is it like?" Cage fighting or something like that. They really would have no idea. Like it's kind of the ground aspect of it. So, but it was fun. It was fun, like kind of doing that and kind of being on the inside. Kind of nobody knows.
Well, that was the thing. I remember like when I used to wait tables when I was in like high school and in college. And I remember talking to people, and I'd come with a black eye or something, and they'd say, "What happened to you?" I was like, "Oh, I was doing jiu-jitsu." And they're like, "What's that?" And it's like, "Well, have you seen that thing that the guys do like fight in the cage?" And they'd say, "Yeah." Well, it's like that, but without punches. And then sometimes they'd be like, "Oh man, like that Royce Gracie guy?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Royce,
like Hoist Gracie." I took pride in it because I was doing this thing that everybody thought it was super cool and badass because of.
Yeah, it was kind of like seen kind of as outlandish a little bit, like, what, you're doing this thing, like you're choking each other. Like,
I mean, it still is to some people.
It is,
but it's just become way more. The thing is, I think that what's happening is that people are tapping into their more primitive side that they've chosen or been told that they shouldn't honor. Right? Because for a long time, it's like we shouldn't do these kinds of things, right? I mean, like growing up, don't fight, don't get into fights, don't do that, like whatever. But it's there, you know? And then people get to tap into that, and then they're like, "Wow, this is really interesting. There's an energy inside of me that I didn't know existed."
Yeah.
And so I think we're just basically taking that very human side of us and bringing it up to the surface and giving it an outlet.
Mm-hmm. And you're seeing, like kids, obviously a lot of kids, a lot of women, older men that have like businessmen that have been, sitting at their 9 to 5 all the time. All of a sudden they somehow, maybe a lot of times they bring their kids in and they see it and they decide to hop on the mats.
Let me try that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then they get addicted to it. It's kind of really interesting. I don't know. It makes you feel a little more alive, I think, because life can be sometimes be a little mundane. So you do something really strenuous like that, it kind of makes you feel more like you're just you're pushing yourself in a way that they maybe normally that you kind of got away from. Like maybe in high school or college, you played a sport that really stressed you. Like you had to really push, dig deep, kind of thing. And now it allows you to do that again.
And I think that it's also something that can't be like technologized. Like basically, like for instance, here's what I mean. Like everything that we do, like can be like there's technology that gets involved and it can be changed so dramatically. Even the way we communicate, like let me send you a text, or like I'll shoot you a DM, like instead of calling you or just like talking to you face to face. You can't do that for jiu-jitsu. It's like you have to come in person, you have to be there with the group, you have to communicate with people face to face. And you have to be connected to people like body to body. There's no way we don't have robots yet that we can roll with. I mean, I guess that'll change it, right? If you can get like your own, instead of getting one of those stupid grappling dummies that like lays around.
I threw mine in the trash.
Did you really?
And I was worried, like the head or the legs were sticking out. I was like, I hope those trash guys don't freak out. But yeah, it was funny.
Why'd you throw it in the trash, dog?
Why
were you training with it? Why were you training with it?
I probably
drilling,
trained
bro?
with it like twice. And I was like, I could probably get the same drilling quality of drilling. I tried to do like arm bars, not arm bar, I'll flip around. Yeah. So I was like, I can get the same drilling like on a heavy bag or like use like one of those exercise balls just to do like just movement drills. That's really what you're doing is like movement drills. Right. So I don't need to have these weird floppy arms that don't even feel the same. It's just, I don't know. I know they have like big heavy bags with like kind of like arms that kind of stick out, which I think would be maybe more realistic.
Come here, son. Let me try some stuff with you. Just play little jiu-jitsu games with them. Probably be more fun.
Dude, here's a funny story. So I don't know if I should be proud of this or not. So me and my son were like wrestling around. Like he got in like our bed, and me and him were like wrestling around. And I showed him like, Oliver, this is an arm bar. So I go into like his room, and he's got his sister in an arm bar.
Oh, nice.
And just like holding it, and just like he's not like pulling it. He's just like laughing around. I was like, I told my wife, I was like, I showed him an arm bar, and he kind of did it. She was like, all right, well, he's he's figuring it out. Like naturally, even without knowing stuff, he'll jump on and climb on and like get hooks in on my back and do all this crazy stuff.
Wrestling's human.
Yeah. You know? So, but I was like, huh. All right.
You show him how to do a double leg, so when he goes to preschool, if anybody messes with him, like double leg,
dude. And, you know, we talked about a little bit, you know, on the podcast. But like one thing I wish I would have done is wrestle. And I did like a week of wrestling, and I was like playing soccer at the time. I was like, I don't need to do this stuff. This is too hard. I hurt my thumb. Like I sprained my thumb. I was like, screw this. Like it's all sweaty and stinky in there. Well, I just wasn't there mentally.
Well, dude, that was a lot of people. I remember like
I wasn't there.
A lot of times, I remember like when we would get people that would come to our wrestling practices back then. I mean, they would just look at us and go, "That's gay." You know,
See,
I mean, that was just because, I mean, like, I get it. We were wrestling around in like spandex and stuff.
Dude,
and
to me, it was like, and I kind of knew what the UFC was and stuff, so I knew a bit about grappling. I just never saw myself as a grappler. I never visualized myself, and I just didn't. It wasn't my time. I think I just didn't have that mentality.
Gotcha.
Like there was other stuff I was more interested in doing, and that was just it was a commitment, man. It was a grind. It was a grind. I was ready for it, and I think eventually I got to the point where it just kind of sucked me in.
Yeah, we would have like people from other sports come try a wrestling practice out. They didn't typically stick around. It was too hard. You know, they would like, you know, I mean, like some of the guys that, I mean, there were guys that played multiple sports, but we'd have like, I remember we had a basketball player one time, like he came and did one of our practices because he wanted to try it out, and that didn't go so well. I remember I was a big nerd in high school, so with some of my nerdy buddies that I played like video games with, like decided I'm gonna try wrestling, and I mean it was brutal, bro. I mean they were just flopping around and stuff, and they quit like because it's really really tough.
It is,
you know.
And at that young, like you being so young at the time, it's like, man, if you can stick with it, dude, you can be a resilient dude. You can be it's tough for sure. And watching those guys run stairs and like after hours and cutting all kinds of weight.
Well, and you went to Seneca, and I remember like
good team, yeah.
They were tough, and I remember they do this thing there, a buddy of mine trained there, where basically like you'd have like an initiation where they'd like cross face you, like everybody on the team would like cross face you one good time, yeah. You know, which I'm like, I mean, we all did some crazy stuff.
Sure,
I mean, that's what when you get a bunch of guys together most of the time. Stuff like that happens. It just happens like naturally that some sort of like weird like buy-in happens. It doesn't have to be some physical like thing like that, but there's always something like, you know, you look at fraternities, there's like those humiliation things where they make them do something stupid. You look at gangs and they have like, you know, they have initiations of some sort. I mean, even in jiu-jitsu, we have our own like versions of those things. I mean, it's just rituals that sort of commence the beginning and the end and all these things, but like you now belong to this thing.
We solidified. You've gone through the fire, so to speak.
It's something that exists and stuff like that, and you know it.
I love it. I know people talk about like the you know the gauntlet. Like, dude, it's an honor to go through that.
Yeah, you know it's funny, man.
It's an honor.
I remember like one of our guys, Kevin, he's from he's a cool dude. We gave him his purple belt, and he was a little nervous about the gauntlet. He was super nervous, and he didn't have an ounce of fat to soften the blow either. But he ran through it, and he was like, that wasn't too bad. Like it sounds terrible because of the slapping of the belts, but it really is all.
I don't want to do it every day, but
no,
I will do it once every 2, 3, 4 years. It's fine. It really is. It's worth it. You're kind of on a high a little bit from getting your belt too, so you're willing to kind of do whatever.
Unless you're Adam. Adam will do it probably every day.
Adam will do it.
He's psycho.
Adam,
and he'll dance to it and make music.
If you don't know, check out Chewy's YouTube channel.
Yeah,
you'll see
go
it
watch.
there.
I put in Adam's belt promotion, and you can watch both of them, both from when he got his black belt, when he got his first stripe. It's absurd and funny and hilarious. I love it. And he's so much tougher than I am as a human being. Because I could do like the sting of that. I'm like, ow, it hurts.
It depends. You kind of do that.
But dude, I'm terrible.
It depends on where it hits you too. There's a spot. Your low back. Hits my low back. It's the worst.
Anywhere. I'm the biggest baby, dude. It's like Jess like make fun of me because I can take a punch to the face, but then like she has like that Dr. Pimple Popper kit. So like she'll like want to come at me like I've got like a pimple or something.
It hurts.
And she'll poke it. And you can't feel that, but then it's got this like little metal circle ring.
Yeah.
And she'll press it into my skin, and it like kind of stings. And I'm like, it hurts. And she's like, stop being a baby, you know. And then like I'll do it to her, and because she's like she'll have a pimple, and she doesn't flinch. But me, I'm like this big. Like, how it hurts.
You're a big baby.
It hurts.
It does. It is kind of annoying. It's annoying, but not as bad as a belt.
All right, guys. So again, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Again, big thanks to our sponsor, Charlotte's Web. If you guys want to get some solid CBD products that are solid, legit CBD products that are third-party tested, so you know what's actually going to be in the box or the tincture or the whatever you're getting, because it's been third-party tested rather than some unregulated, like, gas station CBD that
the good stuff,
the stuff that could be giving you stuff that that's not even listed in there. If you want to get the good stuff, check out charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu, 50% off. If you want to check out Matt's gear that I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast, the shorts that don't have the Velcro, which is nice because it means that you don't have to toss them, even though you've got a perfectly good pair of shorts that simply the Velcro doesn't strap anymore. They're nice. It's almost a mixture between like grappling shorts, Muay Thai shorts, and like just traditional athletic shorts. They're very comfortable. If you want to check them out along with all his other stuff at epicrollbjj.com, that's the website. Use promo code Jiu-Jitsu, save 15% on the order. And guys, listen up. If you're still listening here, if you're listening right now, that means you liked the podcast, right? Yes. You liked it. You enjoyed it. You said, you know what, man, I'm going to listen to these guys talk for a while. It's been probably getting near 2 hours at this point with this outro that's taking forever, right? Well, if that's the case, it means you like the podcast. So if you like the podcast, here's something you can do that won't even cost you $1, not even a dime, not even a penny. Oh,
it's free.
It's free. Well, it's not free. It'll cost your time, but a very relatively short amount of time. So here's what you do. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform that allows reviews and stars, we would appreciate if you give us the most stars possible and a good review, if you should feel willing. If for some reason you don't feel willing to do that, shoot us a DM on our Instagram and let us know why. But if not, give us lots of stars and a good review.
Lots. We like stars.
I don't know, because you never know. This podcast could be dated, because if I say, give us 5 stars on iTunes, and then later iTunes says, now we've got 7 stars. I don't know.
It's very arbitrary.
Huh?
7. Why 7?
I don't know. Why 5? Why not 10? Or why not 2? Why not 2 stars? Either why not just bad or good? It's good or bad, right? Who knows?
It doesn't leave a lot of room for between.
Well, and let's be honest, Eugene, when someone's doing a 5-star review, it's not like they have a great criteria. This one is a 3-star review because it missed this, and this. This one's a 4-star review, this. It's all arbitrary. It's like, I really like this one, 5-star. This one guy said a word I didn't like. I give it 1 star, right? Like, I'm sure there's very little variation, right? Like, it's like I was looking on Yelp one time, and some guy that was like I was looking up these bad reviews, and there was this one dude, for some reason I clicked on his name, and like the dude gave everything a 1 star. Like, he was even giving the damn Taco Bell a 1 star. I was like, bro, it's Taco Bell. What'd you expect? Did you go in there thinking you're gonna get like cuisine? It's like it's dog food wrapped in a tortilla. Right?
Hey, you watch it. You watch that talk. I haven't had Taco Bell in like probably 10 years. I used to love Taco Bell, though.
Oh, I did. I used to kill Taco Bell.
Grilled stuffed burrito when it used to be $1.89 and it'd come up to $2 even.
Yep.
Those were the good old days.
Oh, man, the good old days.
Stack it up.
Yeah, you could get a grilled stuffed burrito, and then I'd get I used to like those nacho cheese chalupas.
Oh, yeah.
And what else did they have?
Potato burritos.
Potato burritos. I wasn't a big potato burrito fan.
Those are good.
And then what else? They had a bunch of stuff I used to eat.
Taco Bell. Holler at us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they serve breakfast now, so you can.
Oh God!
You can start pooping your guts out in the morning.
That's what I was thinking. Don't wait till the afternoon to get diarrhea. Start in the morning.
just get that stuff rolling.
Oh man. Clean yourself out.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's all arbitrary as far as the stuff goes. But anyway, getting back to it, if you want to give us some stars, we appreciate it. And if you so happen to be over on the YouTubes, which I'm sure you probably are, because it's probably some point where you found me. And Eugene, because we both have YouTube channels, but if not, I mean, hey, whatever. But if you should be over on the YouTubes, while you're there, put in the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. We have a YouTube channel now, and we would be most appreciative should you go to that our channel and subscribe. You don't have to. I don't really care if you do. It's fine. But if you'd like to, because we have the podcast there, if you want to watch them and listen to them, because that's actually how I digest most of my content is through YouTube. You can check it out there. And so, yeah, that's that, guys. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much for being with us this week. And that's that. I'll talk to you next time.